Good morning to you. It's Monday morning. I hope you are well and cheerful. I hope you had a lovely weekend. And thank you for joining us as we continue our adventure through the book of the prophet Isaiah. Just to remind you, if I may, a bit of context. Isaiah was written sort of 700 years or some before Jesus. Don't forget, it's a big book, 66 chapters, and it fits quite neatly into kind of three sections. There's chapters 1 to 39, chapter 40 to 55, and chapter 56 to 66. We're still in the first section, you might say, and we skip on. Roberta did some of the chapters last week. I'm now going to skip on a mere 20 chapters to chapter 35. Absolutely wonderful stuff, this. Isaiah chapter 35. Read you the whole chapter. Enjoy this. The wilderness and the dry land shall be glad. The desert shall rejoice and blossom. Like the crocus it shall blossom abundantly, and rejoice with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given to it, the majesty of Carmel and Sharon. They shall see the glory of the Lord, the majesty of our God. Strengthen the weary hands, make firm the feeble knees. Say to those who are of fearful hearts, be strong, do not fear. Here is your God. He will come with vengeance, with terrible recompense. He will come and save you. Then shall the eyes of the blind be opened, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. And the lame shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the speechless sing for joy. For waters shall break forth in the wilderness, and streams in the desert. The burning sand shall become a pool, and the thirsty ground springs of water. The haunt of jackals shall become a swamp. The grass shall become reeds and rushes. A highway shall be there. It shall be called the Holy Way. The unclean shall not travel on it, but it shall be for God's people. No traveller, not even fool, shall go astray. No lion shall be there, nor shall any ravenous beast come upon it. They shall not be found there, but the redeemed shall walk there. And the ransomed of the Lord shall return, and come to Zion with singing. Everlasting joy shall be upon their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. For those of you who come from a particular generation of Christian, you have a song in your head. Therefore the redeemed of the Lord shall return. I'm still going to ring it in my head every time I read this. Absolutely fantastic words. 3 or 4 things to bring out of it this morning. The first thing you've got to kind of understand is, I mean, we've skipped on 20 chapters, but a lot of chapters 1 to 39 is quite hard work. There's quite a lot of judgment going on. The people of God have gone astray, and there's trouble coming their way, which basically means exile. But to understand chapter 35, you've got to understand what's going on in chapter 30 to 35. Remind you of the context. Remember, 700 years before Jesus, we're talking of the Judah, the southern kingdom, okay? And they've got political trouble from the north. The Assyrians, what you call the Iraqis, you might say nowadays, they're getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And there was a buffer state between them, which is kind of Syria and Lebanon and so on. And they were getting weaker, and basically there was a massive. What I'm trying to say, there was a massive great threat coming from the north, okay. And they'd enjoyed peace, they enjoyed security because the north hadn't been quite so strong. Now it was getting stronger under Tiglath-Pileser III, and it was getting more and more threatening. And what he says in Isaiah chapter 30 is the people of God. What they did is, instead of turning to God for strength, for support and help, they turned to Egypt. They went south for help. So instead of looking to God to rescue them and save them, they looked to Egypt instead. And what he's saying here is, why did my people, they made plans without asking me? And here he goes, and he goes on to say, and it kind of makes the contrast between the people when they go astray, and in chapter 35, what happens, if you like, when you turn to God. That when God does things, great things happen. That it's an act of God. He will save you. So what he's saying to them is, don't trust in Egypt. Don't trust in humanity, if you like. Trust instead in God. So don't go to Egypt. Don't trust them, but look to God. Look to God for salvation. And here he talks about a highway back from exile, a highway back to good times again, a highway which is safe and secure. So what he's saying is, okay, it may be troublesome and it may be tempting, but don't turn to Egypt, turn to God. And I think he says the same thing to us today. Whatever's going on for us, be it bad or good, it's tempting to look to other things, but actually we must look to God. So whatever's going on for us, however difficult, stressful, painful it may be, look to God. God is there. God will help us. And it says God is our salvation. And because of that, he can do great things in our lives, which is what's just this lovely picture in the reading here. Second thing he talks about is the ransomed or the redeemed of the Lord shall return. Now, the word ransomed, redeemed is quite interesting because in those days, if you owed somebody money, you became their slave. And the only way you could be stop being a slave and stop being their property was to kind of get bought off for the money, the debt to be paid. And that was called redemption. That was called being redeemed or ransomed. The debt was being paid. And what he's saying to the people in the Old Testament is, the redeemed, somehow, okay, you've been naughty, you've been taken away taken into exile, but your debt has now been paid and you can come back. But in a sense, it says something about us today as Christians, doesn't it? Really, we talk about being redeemed, we talk about being ransomed by God. That when Jesus died on the cross, he paid the price. So we do not need to be slaves to sin anymore. Anything that needed to be paid has been paid. And Jesus paid for it for us on the cross. And because he has earned our redemption, because he has paid the price, everlasting joy and gladness are upon our heads, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. So we have been redeemed by Jesus. This promise of redemption for them in the Old Testament. For us, of course, it means somewhat stronger. It means that Jesus has redeemed us. He has paid the ransom. He has paid the price, as they used to say. And therefore, because of what he has done for us, joy and gladness are ours, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. So the first thing I want to say really is to kind of recognise this thing about looking to God especially when times get difficult. But it's tempted to look elsewhere. It's tempted to get deflected in our faith. But the importance of looking to God. And the second thing really is about redemption. It's about Jesus. It's about having the price paid, and allowing us in our lives that Jesus pays the price for us, for what we have been redeemed by him. That by his cross and his resurrection, he's paid the price for us, so that we can be free, so that we can have a highway back to heaven, so that we can have a highway to God, that we can know the path to God, the true path to God, and that we can have joy and gladness in our heads too. But I think the third thing, and as I say, I think you have to kind of remember that this was all written hundreds of years before Jesus, 700 years something before Jesus was born, is what does he say here? This is quite interesting. Then shall the eyes of the blind be opened, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then shall the lame leap like a deer, and the tongue of the speechless sing for joy. Which brings us a bit back really to our Luke's gospel the last few days. Because look at the things that Jesus did. I think it's interesting, the miracles that Jesus did. These weren't just accident. This wasn't just magic making. This wasn't just showing off. What did Jesus do? He gave people who are blind, he gave them their sight. No wonder they were amazed. If they hadn't got the message, there was a deaf man who he unblocked his ears, and he got his hearing back again. Maybe you see where this is going now, don't you? Then, of course, you've got the lame man who's taken to Jesus, who's let down in front of Jesus because the crowd was through the roof and so on. Jesus healed a lamed man, and you've got somebody who couldn't speak, be given his speech back by Jesus. So no wonder later on when John the Baptist says, "Are you the one, or are we to expect another?" What did they say? The blind receive their sight, the deaf receive their hearing, the lame shall hear, and so on. So what the point I'm making is, you can see, bear in mind this is the sign that something great was going on. Isaiah prophesied that somebody would come and would do these things. Actually, here we have the exact prophecy. And what does Jesus do? Jesus healed blind people. He gave them their sight. He gave deaf people their hearing. He made lame people so they could run around. And he gave the speechless their voice as well. No wonder that when people saw what Jesus was doing, they started thinking, Isaiah chapter 35. Awesome. He really is the main man, isn't he? So, as I said, 3 things from this morning's wonderful reading. And as I say, it's a great reading because much of chapters 1 to 40 of Isaiah is lots of judgment and lots of difficult stuff. We actually get this lovely, lovely passage, like an oasis in the wilderness here. But 3 things from it this morning. Firstly, the importance of making sure we look to God, that we don't do the equivalent of turning to Egypt, to other sources, but actually we make sure that we turn to God. That let's allow ourselves to be redeemed, that Jesus paid the price for us. Therefore, the redeemed of the Lord, the ransom of the Lord shall return with everlasting joy abundant. And let's enjoy that joy for ourselves. But finally, also, to when you hear the miracles that Jesus did, when you hear the things that he did, think Isaiah chapter 35. Therefore, the eyes of the blind shall be opened, the ears of the deaf unstopped. The lame shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the speechless sing for joy. That's what Isaiah prophesied. That's what Jesus did, because he's the main man. God bless you, and hope you continue